All right, so this demo is going to be going through how to create a self-portrait using Procreate. So we're going to go ahead and open up our Procreate app here. And I already took a photo, so we're going to go ahead and just start a document. I'm going to go with the generic 2048 by 2048 square. And I'm going to go ahead and import my photo. So I'm going to go to my tools, and I'm going to say insert a photo. I'm going to go to my camera roll here, and I'm going to go ahead and grab this one this time. So first thing we want to do is go ahead and scale up and just kind of blow up our image, get it set, and on that layer we're going to go ahead and just turn it down. So I'm just going to lower the opacity on this thing. For the brush, we're going to draw on top of this layer, so I'm actually going to slide and lock my original image, create a new layer, and I'm going to be drawing just with your standard like a black ink. So we're going to go to inking, and we're going to go to Studio Pen. For Studio Pen, I like to tap and maybe mess with stabilization a little bit, so the amount could be kind of adjusted, or the amount of stabilization or streamline, and just kind of test it out. I think that one's okay. Let's see. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna hit done, and now we're gonna get back, and I'm gonna start basically breaking down my image. So I just want to make sure that my line is not too thick. That looks okay. I'm gonna give that a shot. When we're doing this, we are tracing, so we're just kind of looking for the stuff that we definitely feel like we need to make this look like us. You can see there, my line's a little thick, so I'm gonna lower it a little bit. Let's see where I'm at. I'm at 8%. For the scale, my opacity is all the way up. So when I do this, I don't even need to close off everything in terms of like, if I was gonna fill, we'll do that later, and we'll do that on another layer. So all the information that I'm doing is just going to be outlines. So if I see a shape, I really want to try to, stay pretty true to that shape. I don't want to make stuff up. Right now, by the way, I'm just using like a cheap generic stylus, nothing fancy here. So I'm going through, and again, I'm just breaking down all the information that I feel like I need, and trying not to make stuff up. Now, when I get to areas like the nose, if you see your nostrils, you do want to draw them. So I do see an opening here, so I'm going to draw that. All right. I might break down some extra, information depending. I might feel like, I might need this part of my nose. I might, I see like a little bit of a ridge here, but I'm not going to outline this whole thing. I don't need that. So I really just, give basic information and kind of pick and choose really what I feel like I need in this. So I'm going to kind of advance through this, and you can kind of watch a time lapse of this, and I'll break down the other things I think that are necessary to talk about. The one thing I do want to say is, you want this to look like you, so or whoever you're drawing if you aren't drawing yourself. So it is important that you're double checking, does it look like you? I found a tutorial that I kind of followed to kind of learn some of these techniques last year when I was just starting to get into Procreate, and I found it really helpful just kind of see how somebody else broke down a portrait and some of the ways that you could to make it successful. So again, this one's a little bit stylized, but I think that's okay to stylize this. For the hair, I always tell students, and even myself, just I'm trying to break this down in chunks. I don't need to draw every single strand of hair. I probably will close some of these gaps that are maybe left open a little bit, but in general, we don't want to draw every single strand of hair. So, and you can see my brush is getting a little bit maybe too streamlined, and it's kind of starting to get a little sticky. So if that's happening, what I suggest is maybe going back up to your brush, tapping that Studio Pen, and maybe lower and streamline just a little bit, or lowering the stabilization just a little bit, so you can have a little bit more control over what's going on with the line work. So now that does kind of loosen you up a little bit more, so you may run into some issues just with that too. So you're gonna always have to find like that balance of what's going on. For my beard, somewhat new to drawing beards here, at least longer ones. Kind of treat it, I'm really just kind of stylizing it now. I'm not doing like, exactly what I'm seeing, just for the sake of time, really. But I think I've done this before, and so I kind of know what I'm going for and what I want. So, and I can go in later on and kind of put in some extra details if I feel like I need them. Again, don't be afraid if you mess up an area or an area just doesn't look right to you. Go back and redo it. You know, you can always easily erase. The one thing with when you get to like the shirt or the torso portion, you know, you can be as generic or as kind of open-ended as you really want to. If you want to kind of, you know, change the shirt style or whatever, you can do that. I'm just going to kind of add in all my little details and things here. And again, go ahead and check, make sure it's looking like you at some point, you know. So I think that's looking pretty good. All right, so got this kind of broken down, and the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and create a new layer, and we're going to do our kind of like box that this portrait's coming out of. This is based on somebody else's tutorial, so I just made a new layer, and I'm going to go ahead and just bump up the thickness of this line a little bit. Let's see how that looks. Looks good. Now I'm gonna kind of plan this a little bit. I'm actually going to shrink down. Let's see. Oops. Create a new layer here. And I'm just going to kind of draw on that new layer just a little bit of like a straight line. So I'm going to draw the line, I'm going to straighten it out by holding and then just kind of adjust it. And then I'm going to start where I left off and kind of pull up and hold that so it adjusts and makes it straighter. And then I'm going to put this thing so it kind of goes behind me. So we'll fix that to make that look better. Let's see. So that looks pretty good. I can always adjust this shape that I just did too if I want to move it up or what have you. So I think that looks good. And then I'm actually going to go back there and just on my portrait layer just kind of erase anything that's kind of in the excess here. And then again, the goal is just to kind of make this thing appear like it's kind of closing off and we're coming out of this shape. I'm going to go ahead and bump down my brush size on that eraser just to kind of clean up any little imperfections that I'm seeing. Go onto my box layer, those lines, and just clean that up real quick. So again, if you hold down on a line, it'll straighten it out, kind of clean it up for you. Same thing with the eraser too. So if you really needed to, you could straighten up that as well. All right, and that looks pretty good. Now, once I have this kind of set, now I can go ahead and pinch these together. All right. And so the next thing is I'm going to go back to my portrait layer. I'm going to turn up the opacity on it. And now I'm going to actually color match. So now you can color match directly on yours if you kind of tap on your face to try to get like a really, you know, a tone that's similar to what you're seeing. You know, if I click here, it might change, it can be a little bit darker, but I might add that later. So I'm going to go with like the lighter, middle to lighter kind of tone on my skin. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off that layer again. And now I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. And this one's going to just go below. I have this group. I'm just going to delete this group. I don't need that anymore. So I have my portrait layer. I have my actual face. And I'll use that later on just for reference. But we're going to draw on a layer underneath with all the line work. And so what I do with this is I'm going to go in. We're going to use our inking tool again. Is I'm going to go in and just simply trace kind of the shape of like maybe where like the skin's going to be. So for me, it'll be kind of here. Now I'm going to do sections. Okay, and I'll show you why I do it like this. Okay, and if you go outside the line, it's not a big deal. So I section it off and I kind of close the gap, and then I can go ahead and drop fill, which just saves a lot of time instead of me sitting there and kind of going back and forth. So you do want to kind of stay, you might zoom in. You want to stay, you know, pretty tight with your line work, and you can see I might need to go back and add a little bit of black line work there. Just kind of getting into all these like nooks and crannies. Yours might be a little bit easier than mine because you won't have the beard potentially, so. And then again, if I go outside these lines, not a big deal. Like we can easily fix that. So I just kind of section off parts of my face. And so this is really the next step, is going through and color matching everything. You know, same thing with the hair. Okay, with the hair, I would go in. Let's see. Okay, I'll just kind of click and match. Okay, pick a color I think that kind of is a generic, general color in there. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same thing on that colored layer. I'm gonna go in, and I actually might put the hair on another layer altogether, and I'm gonna go and just kind of, you know, draw that in. Eventually I'll go in and do shading and some details and stuff, but that'll be part of another demo that I add up. So right now I'm just going in and just kind of adding that. You can see there I'm going outside my lines a little bit, so I'd go back with my eraser and clean that up. All right, so the rest of today is going to be geared towards just cleaning up, getting the colors matched. You don't need to do any shading yet, but eventually we're going to be adding shading and trying to match it and make it look as realistic as we can. That'll be tomorrow. So one technique here, one additional technique is just when I'm doing the eyebrows, because the eyebrows tend to get a little bit lighter in one spot, what I'll do is I'll kind of fill them. Again, I'm on another layer with just the eyebrows, and then what I do is I'll go to my eraser, I'll go to my airbrushing, and I kind of just tap like very lightly. You can see my brush is smaller, my opacity is real low, and this is kind of how I create that like kind of faded effect to the eyebrows. So you can kind of see what I've been doing, creating new layers for really every colored layer, and you really just want to do one solid fill. Try to keep it inside those lines. It doesn't need to be, detailed or valued at this point. We'll talk about that in the future. We'll also go over how to do the eyes tomorrow, because that's a little bit different. But if you can kind of get just the face, lips, eyebrows, facial hair, hair, etc. kind of in, then I think you're going to be in a good spot to go for tomorrow. And so my last step right now is kind of going in and kind of cleaning up here. So I'm going to go go through with a studio pen and just make sure I'm on the right layer. So if I see like some information pouring outward of an area that I don't want it to be in, I can go back through, and then I can cycle back through and add, like I know like right here, you can see my ear is like not filled. So I would go through and just pop in some of that. So any like imperfections and things that you're kind of seeing and areas that might need some extra work, you can kind of cycle through today and do that. And I think that is everything for this demo that you will need to know. And this is kind of what we want to be looking like for tomorrow.